The UFC has a massive problem right now, and that massive problem is Dana White. In this video, I want to talk today about the announcement by Dana White co-promoting Terrence Crawford versus Canelo Alvarez. I want to talk about the lack of promotion coming from the UFC and from Dana White, and potentially how Dana White might need to be replaced with someone else because the UFC just isn't in a good spot right now. I don't think that's a secret, but let's get to the tweet on the screen. Turkey Al-Sheikh tweeted out that we would deliver the fight of the century with Riyadh season on September 12th at Las Vegas Stadium. And then at the end, he put, my brother Dana White will promote this first TKO boxing event with me. It will be something crazy. Now, ever since Turkey Al-Sheikh has came onto the scene and he's pretty much took a remote control to control Dana White and do whatever he wants, Dana White just ain't been the same guy, man. Since Dana White sold his stake in the UFC company, right? Since he became the CEO of the UFC instead of the president, and since he's been hanging around Turkey Al-Sheikh, this ain't the same passionate Dana White we once knew, man. And now it's showing because the UFC is more mid now than it ever has been. And I already know I'm going to get the people in the comments saying, dude, UFC fans are never grateful. You guys always want more and more. Like the UFC puts on good fights. No, dude, we deserve better, man. Just for all the guys that are being UFC shills and defending Dana White in the UFC, are we not going to pretend that they're not charging $80 to $90 for UFC pay-per-view events in the US? For what they're offering, that is pathetic. I'm sorry, UFC 315 is not worth $80. UFC 312 should have been free. That was one of the worst cards that was labeled a pay-per-view ever. 313 and 314 were decent. But it's like, what are we doing with these prices? You guys are not putting on a good product, but yet you expect the fans to shill out $80 to $90 of their hard-earned money. And you wonder why they're like 40% of the fans are illegally streaming the fights. It's because people can't afford it, man. You're not putting on a product worth putting that kind of money into. And I'm sorry, man. The recent UFC is just not the UFC that we all know and love. It's just not. And I also want to talk about Dana White. He's worried about everything except for the UFC right now. It's so clear to me. On March 5th, Dana White and Turkey Al-Sheikh signed a new TKO boxing deal. Now, that in itself should have made fans raise their eyebrows. Why is Dana White, the guy that once shunned boxing and said that it's a dying sport, nobody cares about boxing, boxing's a joke, the promoters are a joke, now he's going to dive into boxing? No. If you're going to dive into boxing, just bounce low, bro, because nobody gives a flying fuck about boxing. The fights are 70% decisions. And every single fight you watch in boxing, it's never about the two fighters that were fighting. It's always about, oh, there was a robbery in this event. There was a robbery. No one cares about boxing. He's also been yapping it up about Power Slap, about how, dude, the deal we just cut for Power Slap is bigger than the Spike TV deal. Power Slap's the biggest sport on the planet, bigger than Real Madrid, bigger than all sports. It's just ridiculous that he's trying to gaslight the fans into thinking the Power Slap is bigger than the UFC. But obviously, you see the problem here. He's focused on everything that isn't the UFC. Power Slap. Nobody cares about Power Slap. If you're a UFC fan and you watch Power Slap, thank you for showing that all you care about is brain rot, because real UFC fans don't give a damn about that gimmicky ass sport, they call it. And for as far as boxing goes, listen, dude, Dana White is the UFC freaking CEO, man. Why is he dibble-dabbling into boxing? We cannot have a guy like Dana White be the CEO of the UFC if he's going to be yapping and worried about everything but the UFC. Like, you cannot promote MMA and promote the UFC or boxing at the same time. It just doesn't work. There's not enough time for Dana White to do that promotion. And Dana White, he's just mentally checked out, I feel. He's been with the UFC since, 2003? I get it. He's been in the game for a long time. He's done a lot for the UFC. But listen, man, if Dana White doesn't want to do what he once did for the UFC and grow the sport, then just step down and let somebody else take over. Like, Dana White doesn't need to be the face of the UFC anymore, because he doesn't seem to have that burning passion for it that he once has. And it shows, man, because people are going to say, dude, it's not just Dana White. Obviously, there's other players like Hunter Campbell and Ari Emanuel. And I agree with that. But it's like Dana White is the face. And it's like he kind of been running the show for a long time. And in recent times, they're just coasting. The UFC doesn't care to grow the sport anymore. And that's so clear. Look at the last year of fights. Undeserved title shots. Let me get to that. This next slide. The UFC just doesn't promote fights. They don't. And it's extremely frustrating. Why is it May 5th, right? May 5th. and we don't know who the main event for UFC 317 is. Matter of fact, we don't know a single fight on the damn card because the UFC has not announced it. People are yapping about how Islam, we're waiting on the results of 315. That is so much bullshit, man. What about the people that spend their hard-earned money to go to UFC events? Maybe they're flying from a different country, and they don't even know what to plan around because we don't even know who the damn main event is. That's a big problem in the UFC right now. Why are they announcing cards like a month and a half before the card, dude? We should know 3 months out what a card's main event is so we can build hype. We already know what the main event of 318 is, and that's a letdown. I'm sorry. Look at 312. It's not a great card. Nobody should pay $80 for UFC 312. UFC 315, not the best card. The prelims are kind of ass. I'm not going to pretend like a Bilal JDM card has got me on the edge of my seat. It just doesn't, man. And then UFC 316, O'Malley-Merab rematch. Nobody gives a fuck about that fight. 317, we don't know who the main event is. 318, a BMF title fight is the main event. The UFC just continues to drop the ball every single event. We're getting fed shitty events, shitty fights, and they're so out of touch. And I think Dana White is a massive problem for the UFC right now. He's not. We need a new face of the UFC that's not worried about holding hands with Turki Al-Sheikh and worried about yapping about power slap every 10 seconds. But let's talk about not the lack of promotion for fights. That is one thing that the boxing does way better than the UFC is they actually promote their events very well. They do the circle roundtable with the fighters talking back and forth to each other, which creates for some great moments. And the UFC used to do stuff like that. Remember a time when TJ Dillashaw and Dominic Cruz were going back and forth, yapping to each other, and now that got some great moments. Still clips that people watch to this day. John Jones and Daniel Cormier sitting opposite each other with Joe Rogan. Jorge Masvidal, Darren Till. We got those moments back in the day, man. And that's missing. Now, half the time a fight comes up, a big fight, and most people don't even know it's happening because there's zero promotion. Like, why are we not promoting the fuck out of Aspinall Jones? And why are we allowing John Jones? That's another issue. John Jones is dragging the sport through the mud, and Dana White and the UFC are allowing it. He's making the heavyweight division and the entire sport a joke, putting Tom Aspinall's entire career on hold so he can just sit around and beg for $50 million that he doesn't even deserve because he's a steroid cheat. But either way, you guys get the point. The UFC is not promoting anything. Let's talk about Dana White at press conferences, and I can't be the only one that notices this. You see Dana at a press conference, right? And this is the guy that used to be so hyped for the promotion for press conferences. Now he's getting annoyed when the fighters go back and forth. Go back and watch the UFC 311 pre-press conference between Merab and between Umar. Dana White is visibly irritated because the fighters are going back and forth. He doesn't even care about the fighters building the fight anymore. That annoys him at this point. And he like, it's so clear. He will like, the fighters would be going back and forth. He'd be like, all right, guys, next question. It's like, dude, that's what builds the hype. That's what fans want to see. We want to see the fighters go back and forth. We want to see them throw some nasty one-liners at each other. We want to see, I don't know, man. Keep Dana White away from UFC press conferences, far away. Let's get John Anik out there. He's much better than Dana White, but back to what I was saying about Aspinall Jones. This is potentially one of the biggest fights in UFC history. Easily could sell over 1 million buys. Why is there zero promotion? Why does Dana White refuse to say Tom Aspinall's name in the media? Tom Aspinall is one of the most dangerous finishers we've ever seen in the history of the UFC. He could be built as the guy that could slay the GOAT in John Jones and be the future of the heavyweight division, but no. Dana White and the UFC don't give a damn about that. They don't want to promote Tom Aspinall. Dana White's too busy with John Jones' chode in his mouth and just going around saying, John Jones, the pound for pound #1 fighter in the world. Like, dude, no, he's not, dude. Look at his last 2 wins, Cyril Gane and Stipe over the last 5 years. This dude should even be on the pound for pound list. And if he's not going to fight Aspinall, then why are you allowing him to make a mockery of the sport? Just move on. Like, no one cares about, I don't know, man. I'm just yapping, but yeah, just no promotion. Where's the promo packages? Where's the hype? Where's the roundtable interviews? Where's the face-to-faces? They did the little face-to-face over camera with Ilya versus Max Holloway, and it made for some good moments, but I want to see him in person. Why is there zero promotion? The UFC does more pay-per-view sales whenever there is a promotion leading up to fights. And that's why boxing, a lot of times in the big pay-per-view, sells more than the UFC because they promote better. Even if the fights are garbage, the hype is built up at boxing events because they promote it so well with the fighters going face-to-face, creating great one-liners, creating heated moments between the fighters, and then you get to see the fight go down. And even if the fight's a dud, it sells heavily because it's so greatly promoted that it doesn't even matter. I'll say this: boxing as a promoter and the way they promote it is amazing right now. But the fights are suck. The UFC, the fights have never been better. We're getting bangers after bangers, but the promotion is non-existent. So what happens is you have people like myself and UFC fans around the world that just have no excitement for these upcoming UFC cards because there's no promotion. Like Bilal versus JDM, why not do a sit down for that? O'Malley Merab at a press conference, that was one of the most boring press conferences I've ever seen. And they want to label Sean O'Malley as a star, and this dude said like 4 words at the press conference. Nobody gives a shit about Sean O'Malley fighting Merab again. I'd rather see Sean O'Malley versus Corey Sandhagen. Why are we giving him another title shot? Undeserved title shots for Dana's favorites. Let's talk about that. Dana's favorites gets all the undeserved title shots. Or just in general, not even just Dana's favorite. Like, just think about it. Dustin Poirier got an undeserved title shot against Makhachev. Now we got Sean O'Malley getting the undeserved rematch. We had Umar get a title shot against Merab despite only having 1 top 10 win, right? Who else? We have debuting guys like Asakura getting title shots. We have Khalil Roundtree getting title shots over Ankalaev. Like, it just goes on and on. If you literally look at the title shots in the last like 2 years, you could argue that like 40 to 50% of them went to the wrong guy. And it's just like the UFC is almost turning into boxing where the top guys don't fight the top guys anymore. Why, if they did, why is Aspinall broken the record for being the interim champ for the longest in UFC history? He's the longest reigning interim champ. Why? Because Jones refuses to fight him because he's an absolute pussy. And we're stuck with this. We're stuck with no promotion. Like I said, we're a month, less than 2 months out from UFC 317. We don't know a single fight on the card. And I mean, I'm sure you guys are tired of hearing me yap about it, dude. I just want the sport to be exciting again, man. I want to be pumped for a fight because there's been so much promotion. And I remember a time when in 2015, right, which Daniel Cormier versus John Jones won. The promotion for that fight was so excellent. It was amazing, and it built so much hype, and I'm pretty sure that card sold like 900,000 buys because there was hype around it, man. Now we don't even know what the UFC sells in 2025 because they hide the numbers because they have a guaranteed amount they get paid from ESPN, right? No matter how much pay-per-view buys they sell, they get paid for 500,000 buys equivalent, I believe, from ESPN. And I heard the ESPN deal ended, but I'm not sure how that whole thing works. Maybe the UFC will be going to Netflix, but it doesn't matter what platform the UFC is on. They need to promote fights. The UFC has a massive promotion problem right now. And I'd argue that a lot of that is Dana White's fault because Dana White used to be the promoter for the UFC, and he's been everything but. He doesn't promote anything. He doesn't promote Jones Aspinall. He doesn't promote Ilya Islam, which is 2 of the biggest fights you could put on in the history of the sport. Neither of those fights are being promoted. Who does he choose to promote? Fucking Sean O'Malley. Who gives a shit about Sean O'Malley, dude? Sean O'Malley can't sell sand to an Arab. He's just not good on the mic. Sure, his fighting style is entertaining, but why are we promoting him? Why are we promoting John Jones, who's done nothing but make a mockery of the sport, duck his opponents, terrible PR nightmare for the UFC, beating women, right, doing steroids, just a nightmare for the sport, having the UFC move entire events on a week's notice because he failed a drug test. And he gets all the glory. This guy gets to drag the heavyweight division through the mud while Tom Aspinall's prime is just ruined. I just don't understand. And Dana White, like I said, he's mentally checked out. His head's not in the game like it once was. And I don't know, man. I think that it might be time for a new face of the UFC. That's what I think. I think that Dana White dibble-dabbling in power slap and boxing and not promoting the UFC anymore, it might just be time to move on from Dana White. Does that mean that Dana White needs to just disappear and not be anywhere near the UFC? No, not at all, but he shouldn't be the main guy anymore. We need a main guy being a promoter. Maybe do John Anik. I know he's a commentator, but I get way more hype whenever I have John Anik at a press conference. He actually lets the fighters go back and forth, right? He actually gets pumped for the events and has some excitements. Dana White just pretends he doesn't hear questions. When he gets a hard question, yeah, what's that? What's the question? Yeah. You know, Sean and Merab want to fight each other, so Sean's back. Like, oh, dude, so much hype between Merab and O'Malley, dude. I'm on the edge of my seat for this one. I think that if Dana White is not going to be dealing with the UFC, then he shouldn't be the face of it. He could still be the CEO. Who cares who's labeled the CEO? But can we get like an official promoter for the UFC? Because we don't have one right now. The social media team is terrible. They don't post anything worth watching. It's like there's no promotion for any upcoming fights. The next few cards are an embarrassment. Like Bilal JDM as a pay-per-view is decent, but Canada fans get screwed once again with a bunch of WMMA fights that nobody cares about, right? And then we got Aaron Blanchfield versus who is it? Macy Barber as a Apex main event with Gamrot on the as the co-main event. That's a joke. Who else? Burns versus Morales. That's a card. That's a joke. And I'm telling you guys right now, I'm not streaming these shitty Fight Night cards anymore. It's just not worth it, dude. Like, I'm sorry, these cards suck. Why, as fans, are we being punished? We deserve better, man. We deserve better. All the UFC shills that are in the comments yapping, saying that, dude, you're just an ungrateful fan. The UFC still puts on good fights. No, they don't. What good fights, dude? What good fights? They drop the ball every time. Daniel Cormier, Brock Lesnar, drop the ball. Tom Aspinall, John Jones, a year and a half, still hasn't happened. Drop the ball. Ilya Islam, potentially at 317, but knowing the UFC, we'll get fucking Islam versus Gaethje, which nobody cares about. It's just embarrassing, and we don't get big fights anymore. Like, when's the last time we got a big fight? Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev? I didn't really care about that fight, dude. I didn't really care. I mean, it was nice to see Alex defend against a guy that deserved it, but Bilal Muhammad as a main event? Who gives a shit about Bilal Muhammad? Put this guy on a fucking Fight Night main event to defend his belt. Nobody cares about Bilal Muhammad, dude. Ilya Islam should be promoted more than any other fight right now, because we already know John Jones ain't going to fight Tom Aspinall, so he's going to retire. John Jones has no interest in fighting Tom Aspinall. That's never been more clear. He's talking about $30 million, but yeah, sorry guys, I'm just yapping a bit. I'm frustrated. I'm as a person that dedicates pretty much like 80% of my time whenever I'm not at my wife and not at my job, I'm dedicating 80 to 90% of my time on this sport and just wanting it to be something amazing that I know it can be. It can be so much bigger than boxing. It could be literally the biggest global sport in the world, but the UFC just doesn't give a fuck to do that anymore. They're in coast mode, and I think Dana White is a huge part of that problem. I think if we got rid of Dana White as like the face and like the promoter, I'm not saying completely get rid of him. He can still be there sometimes. But like, get rid of him. Don't bring Dana White at press conferences. Dana White sucks at press conferences. Get him out of press conferences. I don't want to see him there anymore. He just is not interesting. He makes the press conferences suck, and he seems to end them in like 20 minutes. Get him out of there. Put John Anik in, right? I don't want to see any Power Slap promotion on the UFC official channel. Nobody gives a shit about Power Slap. Stop using the UFC to branch off your fans into Power Slap. Nobody cares about it. It's literally TikTok brain rot. I don't give a damn about TKO boxing, dude. And neither, if you're a UFC fan, you don't care about TKO boxing. Like, you just don't. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. Let me know what you guys think. Are we just overreacting? Are we being ungrateful fans? Is Dana White, dude? People are gonna I can already see it in the comments. Dude, Dana White's been around for 25 years. Of course, you know he's gonna slow down. And like I said, that's fine. If that's your take, then get Dana White off as the face of the UFC. Let's get somebody who actually promotes their promotion, because there's no promotion right now. Like, what fights are you guys excited for right now? Because I can't even name you 5 fights I'm excited for. I can't even name you 2 because nothing's announced. Oh, dude, Bilal versus JDM, so much hype. But I could yap on about this for an hour. You guys get the point. I just think the UFC needs to move on from Dana White because he's clearly mentally checked out. And yeah, I just have to get this off my chest. Just the lack of promotion, Dana White doing everything except dealing with the UFC right now, yapping about boxing and Power Slap, not caring about UFC, not being active or alive at press conferences. I'm just sick of it, dude. And I'm sick of them like charging $90 for these mid-ass events. Like I said, UFC 315 is kind of ass. Like, I'm going to say it. It's pretty bad. It's not a good card for $80. It's just not. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Am I cooking, or am I just being a yapper that is not grateful for anything? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Drop a like on the video if you liked it and you enjoy these type of videos. And yeah, man, as I say, I'm out. Deuces.